reminding yourself that I have access to it at any time. And the more and more that we practice it, the more and more that we remind ourselves, and then the more and more all of a sudden I'm a little bit happier, and your husband or your wife says, wow, you did the dishes last night? And then, and your kids, you say, hey, you guys want to go to the park today? You're like, we haven't been in the park in 3 years, but we're going, and it's just because, what have you been doing? Well, I've been doing this yoga thing, and the more that we feel better for ourselves, the more happier from the inside out, right? This yoga helps strengthen us. This a message I share often in my classes, that the yoga helps strengthen you and from the inside out, right? Bones to skin, fingers to toes, but really inside out, right?
Absolutely. And as this whole summit that we're doing today is in regards to mental health, and then there's that mind-body connection, another question from out there in the audience is, what can I do to quiet my mind? And what I'd like to do is ask each of you that, because I bet it's different for each of you, which means that it's going to resonate with everyone differently out there as well. So, Amy, why don't we start with you?
For quieting my mind, when you said it, Kate, I think a lot of times the mind races with so many things, whether it's what you have to do or your responsibilities and stuff. So quieting is at least acknowledging and recognizing that the thoughts are entering for me, but I really have found for me it's the minute pause every so often during the day, because it's hard, like you're describing, it's racing so much on certain days, and so I don't know that every time I'm going to have 5 minutes, and that's going to be the ability for me to be quiet for 5 minutes. So if I can do a minute, a lot of times with the breath, I typically will breathe in for 4 breaths, hold for 4, and then breathe out for 4. That's kind of what works for me, because I also have to count. And that makes me focus on then something else. But I'll do a minute increment periodically throughout the day. And it's not that I have to set a timer or something. It's like I heard someone describe, when there's a moment of stress or something, I really am doing that, even like when I'm on a Zoom call or whatever it may be, even right before coming on. The visualization and belly breathing helped too. But
Definitely.
For quieting my mind, I don't know that it necessarily is always quiet, if I'm being quite honest.
Sure.
And so I think it's still, for me, is the connection of the breath throughout the day, and remembering to do that, because I don't think that we breathe shallow typically.
We do, and I know, like, my eye, my
is it
eye
telling you to
watch right
breathe?
here,
Oh.
it tells me to breathe, and sometimes I wonder if it's like, it can tell that I'm like not breathing, because sometimes I get going with everything, and I'm like, I realize I'm holding my breath and I don't know it, and that's so unhealthy.
Well, when Pedro was doing some of the poses too, he said it, right? And I think it sounds obvious, breathe when you're doing the pose, but you do start to hold it.
Yeah.
And so I think that reminding is important in every component of the day, as we'll talk about eating in just a minute.
Absolutely. Mildred, how would you like to answer that question? How do you quiet your mind?
Well, you know what? I practice this all the time, every day. I'm a mother of 8 kids.
Oh, my goodness. Well, never mind.
But you know what it prepared me for is how to have patience for my veterans. Mm-hmm. Everybody's different. So the first thing they said, I can't turn my mind off. And I said, well, what breathing does, it brings you into the present moment, okay? Allows you to focus and to calm down. But let me tell you, it's going to come with practice. Yeah. It doesn't come overnight. Now, we might get a level in our first visit, but it builds on it as you practice. It becomes more quicker, yes, and that's the first thing you do.
Is that how sometimes you start off your sessions with your veterans? Do you say, okay, let's take a deep cleansing breath?
Yes, in most of my, not all the time in my coaching, but in the mind-body medicine groups, yes, that is how we start, because in the run of the day, everything is going, and I want them to get the full impact of our visit. So,
absolutely.
Yes.
And Pedro, so you teach classes, you have all these things going on with you, and you're kind of the mindfulness leader, right? So you come into the room and you've got all these people, and how do you quiet yourself to prepare yourself to be able to get these folks to, quiet their minds?
Oh yeah, it's a practice. It's a practice. Breathing. Breathing's number one. You know what I mean? Breathing's number one. And I like to, and this is a technique that my wife has taught me and that I've implemented, is to, when you're feeling a little bit scattered and the arrows are coming in, it's like I have 10,000 things to do on my list, one is just start with one little thing, but bring yourself into the present moment. Notice the things that are around you, right? What can you see? What can you taste? What can you touch? What can you smell? That brings you into the moment, and all of a sudden, the thoughts for me, they tend to quiet down a little bit when I step into the room I'm actually in and I'm present in the room. And it comes with, I teach my kids it all the time. Like, well, what do you see? Like, tell me what's around you. What do you smell? And
it really does create. It encourages people to actually literally be present.
It's a pause. It's a pause on the thoughts, because it's like, I see the lights. I see these beautiful people. Instead of just like I have all these things flashing,
and
in my head.
they're able to actually be where they are.
Exactly, be where you are. Yeah, and it's those small moments. It's those small moments that really allow for us to create those big shifts.
Indeed.
It's the small things.
Oh my gosh. So Amy, I'm guessing you have some stuff to share with us as well, because you're also a yoga instructor in addition to being a dietitian and a food blogger. If anyone hasn't followed Amy on Instagram, I love, and you'll give your Instagram handle, but I follow Amy on Instagram, and I love seeing everything that she has to post all the time, and I get a lot of ideas from it, and she kind of goes outside the box sometimes, which we could all use right now, I think, a little bit. So why don't you talk to us about mindful eating, something I know that I'm very passionate about learning.
Thanks, Kate.
Yeah.
I think it comes back to having that mix of the background and looking into, being able to practice yoga on the day-to-day, drawing in the nutrition part of it, and then even having a focus on diabetes as well, and kind of how it all encompasses what we're describing today, which is mindfulness. And that simply then resonates with how you are eating, right? And I think it comes back to what everybody has said here today. It's just being present. And the thought that came into my mind right now when you were describing that, Pedro, is like you're appreciating the room and like what's there before you. But I know that sometimes that's easier said than done, because we have so much distraction, whether it's the phone, whether it's the TV, we're very connected, I think. And I love the ability of technology. So don't get me wrong. We're here today, right? It's ultimately the way for us to connect. And so I appreciate it, but I also acknowledge that I think it's taken away from, again, think about the last meal that you had. Was it being mindful, as we'll talk about what that exactly means, but were you present? That's the simple kind of quick connection. Right. Were you even paying attention to what was there in front of you?
As opposed to even like eating over the sink or over the counter or like, in your car.
So that's the easy one. Kate. That's mindless eating.
Right, exactly. And before we go further, Amy, you're going to get a whole bunch of new Instagram followers. Okay. What is your Instagram?
It's Amy's Nutrition Kitchen. And I think that it's, like I mentioned, you're drawing in every component where there can be health and where we get energy from food. Right? One of the biggest, I think, disconnects sometimes when people hear mindful eating is they think it's associated with a diet. I use air quotes. Diet is the food that we eat. So it's not necessarily something that you're doing in order for, say, weight loss, etc. It's a practice. It's a tool similar to the meditation, to the yoga. And this is another tool in your toolbox to be able to be present in the moment and paying attention to what it is that you're eating. Now, again, everyone will ask, is this something I have to do every time, every meal? I don't think that's logical, right? Like, you laughed, Pedro, but it's true. I mean, there are going to be times when you are eating and you're on a meeting, right? We used to have meeting eatings, jokes aside, but it was because you're able to multitask. But regardless, you're still drawing into some of those areas of paying attention to the food. It's awareness. And I mean, when was the last time maybe you smelled your food before even tasting it? Right? And saying, just out of habit, I'm going to throw some extra salt on because I just know it needs it, right? And so it's those type of discussions that we're talking about when it comes to mindful eating. And so we'll go through a series in just a second, Kate, of the questions you can ask. The other question sometimes I'm posed with on it is, well, who thinks that much before they eat? And I think the turnaround to that is going back to what we've said. It's a practice, and it starts to become so innate in you that you do it, and you go through this series of questions that we're going to ask in order to really be focused on what you're doing for the nourishment value.
Absolutely. So, how does one get started with all of this? How do we start taking that journey to be present? Because I think people do, we do things by rote, so to speak. And, it's breakfast. Let's, throw something in, lunch, the same thing. So we really don't connect with it. And again, back to that mind-body connection for the whole person. So how do we start with that? Do we get to eat the chocolate now or
mindfully?
I'm going to go through some questions first so that even as I go through and read through it's a series of, instructions, if you will, to take you through to be able to become a little bit more mindful in that present moment and aware of what's going on when you're eating. But I think the series of questions, sometimes it's called a mindful eating cycle. If you look up on Instagram, on Google, search engines and stuff, it's a way for you to kind of go through this description of what I'm going to, talk about right now.
Mindful eating cycle.
The mindful eating cycle. And so when you start off with the questions as to, I think the first and most important question is, why are you eating? Yeah. Now, again, jokes aside, I think everybody would say, oh, because I'm hungry, right? And that's an obvious connection, but I think it still hones in on, can you determine if you are hungry or not? And so I'm not going to go through the hunger awareness scale right now, but I think it really is important to know what your cues are. Think about, again, the obvious, like with the mindful versus mindless. This is the typical way that you'll know is you've gone too long because you become hangry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
I know I've been there.
We all have. Yeah. We all have. It's the mix of hunger and anger. And so by the simple ability to know when you're hungry, so again, back to that question, why are you eating? It's important to understand we eat for other reasons because of physical hunger.
Yeah, we absolutely do. And if you could just touch on, because we are in a time of COVID right now, we are still very much in this pandemic. It is not over. And I know a lot of people have taken to eating comfort foods. And where's the mind-body connection behind the comfort food craving? And, it's almost like a cocooning type situation.
Well, what you're describing is what else is a trigger that allows for then that movement towards food. Again, it's a simple question. Why are you eating? Right? And again, like I said, some people will say, well, why do I have to think about that? Because you're starting to connect and be aware. It doesn't mean you're not going to do it. And I think that what you described is in this last year and a half, we've seen it now more than ever, this description of I'm eating for comfort, I'm eating for stress. And I think that's one coping mechanism, but once you're able to identify and see that's the reason why you're doing what you're doing, I don't know, I always tell people, how do you feel afterwards? Because if you're still feeling stressed, you definitely can utilize other tools like the meditation, like the yoga, like talking to a friend, to be able to go back and really resolve what is the reason for why you were eating if it didn't end up helping, if that makes sense.
Is there a biological or genetic reason why we tend to eat our emotions or we stress eat?
I mean, I think what you're describing is we go towards some of those foods in the moment that literally do make you feel better. So a high fat, high salt, high sugar content sends off that message to the brain, yes, what you're describing. So there's that physical connection of, but again, the end result sometimes is like an initial feel-good feeling. It sparks that blood sugar up. It makes you feel a little bit better. But again, ultimately, it can lead to a low, if you will, even literal, of a blood sugar that doesn't make you feel as great either. I mean, again, we mentioned stress, but you're also thinking of you're bored, right? I mean, right? I mean, that's an easy one. You're sitting in front of the TV, you do this hand to mouth, and you look down and it's gone. Right? Like you weren't even really hungry. You were watching, you're laughing, Pedro, but it's true.
Yes.
We all do it. So simple awareness, and that first question in the cycle is, why are you eating? Next, you're going to ask, when are you going to eat? Right. Again, obvious question, but sometimes taking that time to sit and reflect. I know that on a day where your schedule may be a little bit different, sometimes we go towards a schedule. I know some days you're going to eat before you're actually physically hungry, right? And that's okay because then you're avoiding the hangry, but almost kind of having an idea of when you'll be eating so it goes back to at least some of the physical reasons why we eat. Because again, all of those other areas that I was describing, the boredom, the stress, the loneliness, you're ultimately at least being aware, but you still want to focus on other coping skills that you can utilize and not just the food, if that makes sense. There's going to be moments when you do, but again, still paying attention to how you feel in the after moment.
Right. And we're kind of programmed to do that breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And, is that necessary? Or how do we kind of mindfully decide what our body needs when it needs it? And maybe for some people that's 4 times a day. Maybe it's 6 times a day. Maybe it's twice a day.
I mean, what you're describing, Kate, is then kind of the next sequence of what you're going through. And so when you're eating, but also what are you eating? There's certain foods that digest really quick. And there's other foods that are going to keep you fuller, the satiation longer. And so now you're going back to what is it that you're actually putting together in a meal to create in order to, we get energy from food and we nourish ourselves. But again, there are going to be those moments where, guess what, maybe the trigger is that you're eating dinner and then your spouse comes home and then you're eating again. Right? It's not a physical hunger, but it's just a certain situation. I mean, I was driving today on the highway to get here, but I didn't see any billboards with food on them. But keep in mind, there's other reasons or sparks of things that create an idea, oh, I want to eat right now. So again, besides that physical hunger, so back to your question as to how often, it really kind of depends on what you're eating. And so, again, connecting with knowing what you're choosing, right, in the moment of what you're choosing. Because, again, if it's a simple, short, listen, if you're going to eat before exercise and kind of connecting, I need some energy, short term, I don't want something that's going to keep me fuller longer. We did it with my nephew the other day, kind of just this connection of he plays baseball and seeing which breakfast works better, which one lasts longer, which doesn't make him feel great. There's no judgment in this, which I forgot to mention, which is really important as we go through this kind of sequence, because there's no good foods and there's no bad foods. It's just, again, simple awareness. And it was so, I mean, he's going to be 11. I think of him as still like 4. But he called the other day and he's like, you know that recipe you made with me the other day, Aunt Amy? And I was, which one? I make a lot. But he wanted it because he needed it for his practice. And he really connected in knowing that I know I need some carbohydrate, I know I need some protein and healthy fat, but I don't want it to be too heavy, Aunt Amy, or else I'm not going to be able to pitch well. But think about that at 11, and again, it starting these tools that we're teaching to him. He didn't overanalyze it. He did for me, proud aunt. But no, truthfully, he wanted it because he didn't want something too heavy on his stomach. And I thought, that comes back to what are you choosing to eat? The when are you eating? The why are you eating? And again, it comes back to now even how are you eating? We just described it. Sometimes we're doing it quick. Or are you calm? Right? And again, I sometimes will prepare my meal and make it look really pretty. And someone jokingly asked me the other day, you really do that for yourself? And I do sometimes, and other times I don't. I mean, the power of social media, right? And what you see online only. I've been showing things recently that I'm not really preparing, but that look like they are. And I think that it still comes back to how you see it and how it's presented to you. That alone can make you pause.
Absolutely.
Appreciate where the food came from, right? That same nephew had a garden last year. Did anybody else start a garden?
Absolutely not.
Love the honesty. I kill everything too, Kate, but I started. It's a practice. I'm getting better. It's funny because my papaya tree now has like a bloom on it, so I'm super excited, and I have a passion fruit vine. But this nephew doesn't love vegetables. Anyone else?
I like vegetables. I enjoy vegetables.
Pedro, I'm surprised.
Sometimes.
But so interesting, joking aside, he came back to, I asked him, how was the garden going? And he goes, we didn't do it this year, Aunt Amy. And he goes, I really want to eat a radish. So that connection of last year, odd vegetable, I didn't judge him for loving radish, but, not one that I would particularly hone in on. But he loved it because he grew it and then ended up cooking it. So think about where the food is coming from can even make a bigger kind of picture of appreciation, but then also, again, that full circle connection, I think. And that's starting within kids, and then sometimes when we're so rushed and stuff, we don't always think about how that food got to us on the table. So again, a cycle of questions kind of that you're going through in order to, again, create the awareness, paying attention to what's there before you. I think my mom always jokes, typically, to be honest, that it takes an hour to cook and 5 minutes to eat.
Yeah. Well, if anybody's ever prepared a big holiday meal, right? We know we spend hours and hours and hours in the kitchen, and 30 minutes later, it's just a bunch of dirty dishes. So,
no, never.
never. Why don't we get started on this mindful eating exercise? We had asked everyone early on in our program this morning to, grab a cracker, grab a piece of chocolate. I suppose it would work with a piece of fruit or whatever you have available. But Amy, take it away.
I was looking for my chocolate.
You ladies need
you guys,
chocolate?
if you want to grab, I didn't want to, mine started to melt a little bit. So again, as Kate said, you can grab anything that you have handy. I typically go for something like chocolate. It's a series of instructions that I'll read through for you guys to be able to follow and kind of, again, begin to think of that mindfulness as you're beginning to eat. If you have a cracker, whatever kind of piece of food that you have, anything will work. But the key is that you're trying to, again, begin to focus and pay attention to what it is there before you. So go ahead and pick up your chocolate. Do not unwrap it yet. Ha, ha, ha. Follow the instructions, right? And I love that you did that, Mildred, because ultimately that's what we're quick. We're quick. So the power of pause. Place it in the palm of your hand. You can notice the colors and the shapes on the package, even feel the weight of it in your hand. Pretend like you've never seen this wrapped chocolate before, and go ahead and just examine it a bit closely. You can touch the package with your fingers and even feel the texture. Paying attention to the sound, even if the package is making a sound. Examine all the different colors, looking at the different sides of the wrapper in any way that the light refracts off of it. I got a little too active with my chocolate. If your mind starts to wander and start to think about other things, it really truly is okay, but you're starting to notice those thoughts and you're really coming back to just what's there before you, that chocolate. Go ahead and begin to slowly unwrap the chocolate. Listen for the sounds of the wrapper. Notice the movement of your hand, your fingers, and even your arm muscles as you begin to open the chocolate. You may have and hear other people around you or even other noises, a car passing by. Again, notice the sounds and simply bring your attention back to this piece of chocolate. Raise the chocolate to your nose and smell it. Breathe in several times slowly, focusing on any other smells you may notice. Does it trigger anything else by simply smelling the chocolate? Is your mouth watering? Are you having any thoughts like, Amy, hurry up. I just want to eat the chocolate, and why is this taking so long? Right? So notice those thoughts and really come back to just the simple ability to smell and be present with the chocolate. Go ahead and take a small bite of the chocolate. Try not to chew it or swallow it, but just simply notice the different taste sensations as it begins to slowly melt in your mouth. How does it feel? You can move it around in your mouth. Trying to notice the moment when you are almost going to swallow that chocolate. Obviously, you can go ahead and swallow, simply focusing on those different sensations and any lingering taste. How is that different from a normal way of eating chocolate? You said different, Mildred? Did you? Yeah.
Yes, I really.
No, tell us. Yes, please.
Need to savor the chocolate. I don't eat a lot of dark chocolate.
Okay.
I recently started because of our practice. So, yes, but it's delicious. But I felt it on my tongue, at the roof of my mouth, and it just.
I love that you shared that. Yeah.
Yeah, I had the same sensation where I am a dark chocolate lover. And so when I took the chocolate initially, I was ready to go. But I've done this exercise before. I knew I had to, restrain myself. But really, I don't ever really take the time to smell it. And so those 3 breaths of really smelling it really made me appreciate the chocolate a little bit more. So, yeah, it was really great.
I was going to say, I typically just pop it in my mouth, chew it, and move along and say, oh, where's the more, But this with the smelling it, with actually smelling it, kind of reminded me of camping and s'mores, which was kind of a pleasant memory for me. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that was actually really nice, because when do we actually just, take the opportunity to smell the chocolate, smell the roses?
No, I love that you guys are sharing that. I think it's, again, it's the power of pause. I keep saying that phrase, but I really do think it's truthful, and that even helps in ultimately, again, going back to the quantity of how much we're eating. I had this discussion the other day with somebody, that the size of our plates have grown over the years, and I think that a lot of times we don't fully notice it because it starts to happen so slowly that we begin to have that distortion take effect, if you will. I mean, think about different sizes of bagels and pizza and cookies these days. I took a picture the other day and it was like the size of my face. I mean, they really...
Yeah.
But we start to see it and think it's a normal, if you will, size. And I think that, so going back to like what you described, a simple bite sometimes can really, again, be enough. If you're really, truly tasting it, savoring it, smelling it, taking in all of your different senses. Now, again, the ultimate is to put this into motion with what we're doing in our day-to-day with food and eating. And like I said, I think, jokes aside, it's not happening at every meal. But because it's a practice and because you can keep coming back to these tools, every meal can be, have a different area of it and a different component. And I think that that's the ability for us to be able to navigate and, again, create a different relationship with food sometimes, and, again, experience it in the moment.
Oh, Amy, thank you so much. I really think that everybody is getting a lot of really great information and maybe starting to view things a little bit differently, which is always a good thing, I think. I know we have a lot of folks out in the audience, and I'd like to encourage everybody to send in your questions, and we'll get to them as they come through. That was a very enjoyable experience. Thank you very much. I want to eat the rest of my chocolate now. Do any of you practice mindful eating, or is it something that you struggle with, or is it something you've been doing for years?
Go ahead.
You have
Go
eight
ahead, Mel.
kids.
Well,
Let's talk about mindful
You know
eating.
what? Oh no, I didn't know mindful eating back then.
I was going to say,
But I have incorporated with them since I learned about mindful eating. But we do incorporate mindful eating in our mind-body medicine practices because we want you to understand your relationship with food. And we also want them to understand that as you do these breathing exercises, what it does, it activates the amygdala, the emotional part of your brain. And sometimes we eat out of emotions.
yes.
So just to get in touch with that and see, is that why I'm eating? Because
Yeah.
I'm emotional, and learn to move from that or to incorporate. And because you are mindful of it, you begin to work on it.
Do you remember the early on in the pandemic, there was actually a shortage of yeast because people started baking bread like in a frenzy. And people who had never baked before were starting to bake bread just and it's really kind of interesting if we kind of look back when our environment changes and when things become extraordinarily stressful and there's uncertainty, how we just kind of have an innate almost drive for self-preservation and let's bake some bread. Make sure we have that. Amy, do you want to give your Instagram handle one more time just so everybody has it?
Amy's Nutrition Kitchen. And again, it's nice to be able to come back and having different, discussions on just what you guys are describing. It's whichever food you described, bread, it could be whatever food that is for that person. I said grab a cracker, grab chocolate today, and I think it's still that moment of just kind of pausing before diving in, right? And again, I forget who said it, but when you're driving and you're in traffic, again, maybe you just take it a little bit slower, and now it starts to connect with, because you paused before you started eating, right? It's the same when you're now starting to do other things in your day-to-day living. I mean, at least that's the hope. Right. And I think that sometimes the other thing I'd like for people to know is that it's never going to be a perfect day, a perfect week. It's simply coming back to that exact moment of at least trying it again, because I think that's sometimes the frustration. And again, you guys can talk to that. But I think it's what I keep repeating each and every time to different people when we're teaching our lessons out in the community on Zoom now. But, again, it comes back to how can you be present right now, even with everything else. All the distractions these days, honest. The dog barking in the background, the everything that you think, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just, again, being present.
Absolutely. So we have, you, Mildred, with mindfulness, and we have you with, yoga and then mindful eating. So how can, your layperson, incorporate this into their lives in an easy way in between the school drop-offs and the getting to the office or getting on those back-to-back Zooms, and then doing dinner and the dog and all the things that take over our daily lives? How can the layperson, if you will, kind of step in and say, okay, today I'm going to incorporate some yoga, mindful eating, and mindfulness, without it seeming overwhelming?
I mean, I'll let you guys go before.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, just like we kind of talked about earlier, it's just like one mindful minute makes a huge difference. Like 1 minute.
Mindful minute.
Yeah, just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. And I would say, if these three practices, let's say meditation, yoga, mindfulness, yoga, and eating with awareness is mindful eating. Is speaking to you, right? It's like, oh, I have I know sometimes personally it's like, I'm doing all of it. Like, I'm starting tomorrow. I'm doing everything.
Yeah, how successful is that though? When you go in like with all the gusto and like jump in head first, I know I'll do it for a day.
It's like 2 days, and it's like, and then the third day comes, and like you're like, I'm just kind of tired today, and like mindful. What? No, Netflix. So I would say, just pick one thing and be like, okay, I'm incorporating this into my morning routine, and I have an unwavering commitment from this, and I'm gonna do this, and that's it. I'm doing this. Not like, oh, I'm gonna start, or tomorrow. I'm doing this for myself now and for my family now. And I would say incorporating like one thing, one of these practices, and start with, and know that the other ones are, they're in sim, they're on sim, and then you can turn up the heat, but just start with, like one mindful practice. Like, that would be my recommendation, because it can be overwhelming, and then it's just, no one wants to feel like a failure. Like, no
Right,
one,
that's the thing. You don't want to, if we can't even get ourselves set up for success for some mindful breathing,
Yeah,
we can have the ability to really get down on ourselves,
Yeah.
and that's not good for our mental health. So we want to make sure that it's something that is achievable and set goals that are reasonable, and that, again, do set us up for success. So,
I mean, I think it can seem overwhelming, Kate, but I think at the end of the day, the mindful minute is what I shared works for me. Find what works for you, and yes, this moment of I'm doing it all leads to the frustrations. And so I love how you said it. It just kind of builds, right, and simmers, and you keep the other ideas on the back burner as to come back to is this is what I want to work on, almost kind of having your rotation of what you want to build upon. And it really does start to, again, kind of like a bicep muscle, really start to build and grow and get stronger as well. Again, I think you're going to still have, one of my coworkers always says life is stressful and it's not going away.
right, that's true. It's not going to change.
Right, as we well know within these last 18 months, but I think it still comes back to how are you dealing with it in the moment and what's in your toolbox. And that's what I like for people to start to bring and build into. Something simple with the mindful eating is what we just did. Simply stop and pay attention to the food and smell it. Like take in a couple deep breaths of what it smells like, right? And that comes back to now appreciating what the food maybe tastes like even more so, and maybe that allows for you to eat a little bit less, possibly, right? And just that slowing down, it takes time for your brain to get the message you're full. So again, maybe being able to do a little bit slower. And then my biggest one that I tell people for the starting off with mindful eating is get rid of the distractions, at least for one meal.
So turn off the TV, put the phone down.
Yes.
Okay.
It's important, and it doesn't, listen, I'm not saying to avoid listening to someone calling you that you need to talk to. We're talking about in the moment, turning, like you said, when I was growing up, there was no TV and there was no phone answering. We were there at the table together.
But don't we kind of developed a situation where we feel like we have to be responsive 24/7? And
Yes.
isn't it okay for us to put our phone down and take 30 minutes and actually have an uninterrupted meal and know that whatever happens in that 30 minutes, it's okay that we didn't respond immediately. I think we have a tendency in our society today and our culture to, somebody just texted me, I have to text them back right now. Regardless of what we're doing, drop everything else. And that also creates its own stress.
All the notifications these days.
All the notifications.
Turn them off.
Exactly. Turn them off.
Turn them off.
Okay, not if it's super important, like I said. No, I'm kidding. No, but you're right. It can wait those few minutes in order for you. For me, sometimes when I've been working so much, and if I think I'm just going to keep powering through and eat when I'm doing that, I know that if I stop and I really enjoy the food and in the moment, I come back and I'm more productive, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, do it in the comparison for yourself. And like I said, finding what works for you, but I do know that to be true for me. And I think, again, you'll notice it, that allows for a simple disconnect. I read something the other day and I've started applying it where I am still working from home, right? I go out on a quick walk. That's my commute.
Yeah.
Right? And after as well.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's the disconnect for me to be able to know I'm off.
And it's also it's a sign
Or
of
I'm on.
self-respect.
Yeah.
Self-respect for ourselves to say and set boundaries and say this 30 minutes is mine.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
It's hard to do, though,
It's
Kate.
hard to do. Trust me. I'm someone that is used to, from the moment I wake up, being on the, responding 24/7, the working lunches, that kind of thing, eating at my desk. Not healthy, not good. And one of the things I've been trying to incorporate myself during this pandemic is setting some respectful boundaries that this 30 minutes I'm taking to eat lunch. And I'll get back to you later because this is my time right now and I need this for my own self-preservation.
But it goes back to part of that mindful eating cycle. When are you going to eat?
Right, exactly.
So start to at least look for the day and pay attention to when that could be that window and almost kind of that schedule for you. It doesn't have to be strict schedule, right? But at least honoring and knowing, hey, and again, it comes back to avoiding going too long without eating as well.
Right.
So at least maybe I'm going to throw at least a snack together instead of it being a full meal. And then after that meeting, I will do the full meal.
Absolutely.
Well,
I know we have a question from one of our attendees out there, and the wonderful thing about this particular question is there are a lot of great answers and resources. Can you find yoga on demand or streaming online? Suggestions. Well, I know Baptist Health South Florida. If you visit our website at baptisthealth.net and go to our community health page, you're going to find so many resources for classes that we offer that are free to the community that you can stream and do via Zoom. And then, Pedro, I'm sure you have resources you want to talk about, and Mildred?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, YouTube is a great resource especially for introductory. Like YouTube is just a great basic resource, but there's a lot of stuff available on YouTube. Like there's a colleague of mine, her name is Yoga with Adrienne, popular, famous, everyone knows who she is. But she has some great content, and it's free and it's accessible, and it's accessible, and that's the key. So
the important part is
it's just accessibility. I have stuff on YouTube too, Yoga with Pedro. If you search it, like you'll find some content on there. If you enjoyed the practice that we had today, and I teach online, just search on YouTube. And
that's great.
So
and Mildred, do you have any recommendations for any online resources that you'd like to share?
Well, our veterans do have VA Online and VA on YouTube that they can get resources from, or I'm sure their primary physicians can refer them as well to different sites or different availabilities of help. But what I wanted to say that's very important to us and working with the veterans is that we want them to be mindful of them, and that is hard for them to think about them.
Right.
To take that few minutes for them, to not be judgmental of them, and just to don't be so hard on yourself. Get in touch with yourself. And what we do, we set a non-judgmental, supportive environment.
Nice.
So they can thrive.
That's wonderful. And as we wrap up this session today, I want to ask Amy specifically, but then move along to Pedro and Mildred. Is there a specific diet, or are there certain foods that really help with depression and anxiety and lessen those feelings that we have sometimes? And then are there foods that can cause depression, anxiety, or other mental ailments?
Yeah, I think you're asking a difficult question to answer briefly, right? And I think it comes back to the first starting point is if there are, diagnoses, to obviously speak with your doctor, and if medications are necessary for certain situations, right? But on the other side, where I start first and foremost with food is a balancing act. And taking it into account of looking at what it is that you're building your plate with. Are you doing lean protein, whether a plant or animal source? Are you doing whole grains? Are you doing non-starchy vegetables, and that's half your plate? The others are a quarter of your plate. How are you building it, and what's the structure of what you're putting onto it? It doesn't mean you can't have foods that are, again, those high fat, high sugar, high salt ones that we mentioned. But again, if that's a majority of what a plate is built with, that's where I would begin to start working with starting to improve upon what the plate looks like. And again, I think it's not as simplistic as saying you want to keep it steady and level, right? Within kind of that allows for a better mood, right? But that can also lead towards, again, those other choices that may not be as healthy for somebody. So again, first starting point, and then from there, it's like a discussion of what else are you eating so that we can begin to take a closer look at how we can start to improve one bite at a time, one step at a time, right? Versus doing the all or none type situation. And again, I'm not going to go super deep into it, but again, it comes back to what we're nourishing our bodies with can make a very big difference in our overall effect of how we're feeling. And so again, it really depends on what you're putting in and also how it comes out and how you feel, for sure.
And that definitely is such a huge part of our self-care, which very few of us actually implement self-care. Yeah. Pedro, can you talk about some of the chemical effects in the brain that result from, practicing yoga, doing some of that exercise, really connecting with your body?
Yeah, we're just trying to, calm, bring ourselves into a state of homeostasis, right? Calming the autonomic nervous system, connecting back to ourselves. And, as Amy was talking about with eating, is like I know that when I'm eating whole foods, not from Whole Foods, but whole foods, I just generally feel better. I just generally feel better. And when I allow myself to breathe mindfully, I just feel better. When I'm feeling calmer, I'm feeling better. And that's just my overall goal. I'm just trying to feel good. I'm trying to just feel good.
Yeah. Mildred, we'll finish with you. Still, I can't believe you have 8 kids. That's incredible.
How?
I have 1, and that is enough for me.
I have 3.
What we try to do and what I've learned for myself is to just be in touch with you. Okay? Get in touch with you. Know what it takes for you and what you don't want to do, and be honest with yourself. And that is going to help you to thrive.
And maybe not be so hard on ourselves
and don't
either.
be so hard.
Cut ourselves a little bit
I
of slack,
find that
maybe.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
So I thank you all so much for doing this today and being available to us and being available to our audience and being, so open and answering questions and sharing your techniques with us. I know that this is going to get us a great start for the rest of the day and the other segments that are coming up. So thank you all very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Businesses are a reflection of their people. When employees feel happy, supported, and appreciated, business is just better. We're UKG, and we're in the business of building connections through the world's best HR and workforce management solutions. It starts with people. Everything we do is inspired by people. We learn from them, find opportunities to empower them, and look for ways to put smiles on their faces by helping them make the most of what makes them special. Whether it's their talent, their families, or their culture, it's people who power us to create solutions for our customers that reflect our belief that taking care of each other is the best way to connect with each other. It's this belief that drives all 12,000 of our people to build connections with millions of employees in thousands of businesses, in dozens of industries all over the world. We're UKG. We're more than a business. We're a reflection of our people. And what we see really puts the smile on our face. UKG. Our purpose is people.
Mental health is everything. I'm committed that we live in a world where mental wellness is equally as vital as physical wellness. For those people that think that mental health challenges should be stigmatized, I think they're absolutely wrong. We must break the stigma. We must do everything we can to come together as a community to highlight mental health resources and eliminate the stigma. I'm Scott Brook. I'm the father of 5 beautiful kids. I'm the mayor of Coral Springs, have a family law firm in Coral Springs, and I'm an advocate for mental wellness.
My name is Harriet McMorris, and I am a Miami VA Peer Support Specialist. I work here in PRRC. I've been here for over 6 years. And when I think about wellness and what it means to me, it means my renewal and my recovery. Going through life, finding my different pathways and finding successes, overcoming barriers, learning how to integrate with my friends, my family, my community, as well as teaching and helping other veterans like myself through trauma and learning that they can overcome and become anything they would like to.
My name is Clarence Office Jr. I'm a mental health specialist at the Miami VA Hospital. This is Broward County Mental Health Summit, and I wanted to talk about what mental health wellness is for me. It's a holistic thing for me. It's your mind, your body, your physical health, all of this means wellness to me. If I don't have all these things intact, I can't be of service to anyone else. So my priority is like self-care and making sure that I'm well mentally and physically and emotionally. That's it.
Hi, my name's Kathleen Keeley, and I'm the local recovery coordinator at the Miami VA. And I have the opportunity to help everyone understand that mental health gets better. What mental wellness means to me, it's not the absence of mental illness, but rather the opportunity to pursue your best lived life, to choose what you'd like to choose with the access and support of resources, and to, live your best life.
We're actually out here today at the Broward Fire Academy as part of the Sheriff's Foundation classroom. We're just out here with a bunch of youth from the community, teaching them about the fire service. We have a cadet program and a reserve program. So the cadet program is any student from the age of 14 to 21 that gets to be part of this community, gets to see what it's like to be a firefighter, and just be involved in the fire service. We had live fire scenarios today. We had an opportunity to see just what it's like to be a firefighter.
Hey guys, what does mental health and wellness mean to me? To me, it means creating a work-life balance where you can have the mental wellness and stability for you to care for not only yourself, but your loved ones, your family, and your friends, as well as your community. Take care.
Hello, my name is Harold Pryor, and I'm your Broward County State Attorney. Mental wellness is important because I think you should put it on par with your physical well-being. And so it's important for you to seek help and treatment when needed, so you can ensure that you have a sound mind, body, and spirit, not only for yourself, but also for your family.
Future sets a superior standard. Our resort-style facility ensures you will be able to focus completely on your recovery during your stay with Futures by combining the most in-depth leading-edge treatment with a 5-star level of personalized service. From the moment you arrive at Futures, you'll be surrounded with a staff of PhD or experienced master's level primary therapists, 100% focused on guiding you towards a path of sustainable recovery. Your luxurious suite includes a private bathroom and spacious bedroom. Our revolutionary Days of Ascent program guarantees you a lifetime of treatment through our alumni team, giving you the best opportunity for long-term success. Just one of the many differences you'll find only at Futures.
Hi, I'm Gail Giese with the Florida Mental Health Advocacy Coalition. Mental wellness starts with a safe home, support, and health care that is accessible, affordable, and integrates mental and physical health care. A healthy Broward means everyone here can access the services they need right when they need them. Visit www.flmhac.org. The Florida Mental Health Advocacy Coalition is made up of peers and family members advocating for a better behavioral health system in Florida. Be very well.
Hello, my name is Clarence Office Jr. I'm a mental health specialist at the Miami VA Hospital. This is Broward County Mental Health Summit, and I wanted to talk about what mental health wellness is for me. It's a holistic thing for me. It's your mind, your body, your physical health. All of this means wellness to me. If I don't have all these things intact, I can't be of service to anyone else. So my priority is like self-care and making sure that I'm well mentally and physically and emotionally. That's it.
I wasn't worthy of this life. There was nothing to wake up for. I would would drink and I would self-medicate, but my biggest thing is I would numb. I had to make a choice, and that choice was whether to stay here on this earth or not. When I walked in here, it was the moment I knew I was ready.
Kinder in the Keys is unique because we deal with trauma-only, non-substance abuse.
Can I change the color? Do whatever you want, this is your art.
And it's for women only.
Our clinical team consists of yoga teachers, water aerobics instructors, therapists, integrative health coaches, mental health aides. We have a psychiatrist on staff. We have a medical director.
It's like it took all the pieces of a happy human and crammed it all into me.
What does mental wellness mean to me? When I think about mental wellness, I think about a person as a whole. Most of us focus more on our physical well-being and our physical wellness without thinking too much about our mental wellness. But I noticed something interesting. Over the last couple of years, when I've gone to the doctor, they've actually had questions not only pertaining to my physical wellness, but also my mental wellness. This is showing a slow but steady shift in the importance of our mental wellness. For me, achieving mental wellness, I achieve it through exercise. The times that I have felt both mentally and physically fit is when I'm on a regular exercise routine. And for me, they go hand in hand.
Mental wellness to me is giving equal attention to the things that are important to me. It's about balance. It's about ensuring that the things that are important to me that I give equal attention to, my family, my faith, and my assignment. It's about living on purpose. I truly believe that I am the mother that I am because of purpose. I believe that I am the woman of God that I am because of purpose. I believe that I am on an assignment here at the Sheriff's Office because of purpose. So making sure that everything that's important to me is given equal attention, that I'm not depleted to the point that I cannot give 100% to the things that I am assigned to take care of. Mental wellness, simply stated, is about balance.
I believe it is very important that we don't treat patients as medical conditions, but that we treat patients as human beings who also have a say in their health care and should have some level of responsibility in terms of going forward what their care should be. In cardiology practice, we are fortunate enough to be able to treat a wide breadth of different conditions. High blood pressure, patients with rhythm disorders, patients with heart failure, patients with chest pain or have had heart attacks in the past. I do have a special interest in preventative cardiology as well as women's cardiology and cholesterol problems. I firmly believe that through working with patients before they have a heart attack or before they have an acute issue requiring hospitalization, a lot of heart problems are able to be prevented. Many people don't realize that when it comes to heart disease, women and men have very distinct and very different ways of developing heart disease. And I do make it a point to speak with women and discuss with them why what they're feeling may or may not be concerning, and discuss with them the certain things that they can do to help prevent heart disease, which may be different than how we treat heart disease in men. A lot of times when we first meet patients, it is during a scary moment in their lives when they're hospitalized with a heart problem that is newly diagnosed, whether it be heart failure or a heart attack. And a lot of times that's when we first establish relationships with patients. And I actually find it very rewarding to be able to help them through the hard times and also be able to follow up with them long-term in the office. And developing those relationships and trust with people is part of what makes my job so rewarding as well.
Mental health awareness, what it really means to me is resiliency. Our corrections officers, our deputies, our firefighter paramedics, They physically are fit, and they also need to be mentally fit. And one of the ways we do that is by building resiliency in their mental health. And it has a twofold purpose. It helps us, one, serve the residents and visitors of Broward County better in the performance of our duties, but also it makes them a healthier and happier employee when they go home to their family members. And that's why mental health awareness is important.
Car stand by, 3700 North 15th Street, shots fired at police. 15 North 15th Street, give me what you got. Nathan 10180, shot still ringing off. Give me SWAT ASAP. Long gun ASAP. This is Nathan 10180. Oh, radio, listen.
Things that happened, you then take that home. You then start to think, well, should I like myself? Should I hate myself? And without even knowing, you're now indulging in substance abuse. You're now dealing with relationship issues, domestic violence, divorce, not to mention financial stress. And that's why I wanted to create a space where officers that are active and retired can come to this space, connect, have these open conversations about these issues, and recognize that they are not alone and that it's okay. SHIELD-US stands for self-help in every law enforcement department, and our vision is to end the suicide epidemic amongst police officers, one wellness retreat at a time. We want to take people away from their normal setting, place them in a whole new setting that just feels like new air, feels like new space, to give you that, okay, this is the start of your new now. If you're interested in supporting SHIELD-US and learning more about us, scan the QR code, find out who we are, and subscribe to our website so that you can learn more. Thank you all so much, and please help us shield those that protect and serve us every day.
When we talk about mental health,